He was completely blind. No sight in either eye. None. He hadn't seen a battlefield in years. Hadn't seen the faces of his soldiers. Hadn't seen the terrain. Hadn't seen the enemy forming up against him. He won anyway. Every single time. 60-something years old. Sightless. Leading armies of farmers and carpenters against the most powerful military coalition in medieval Europe. And he never lost a battle. Not one. Not even after the blindness. Not even when he was outnumbered 5-1. Not even when the Pope himself declared a holy crusade specifically designed to destroy everything he had built. This is the story of Jan Žižka, and it starts not with glory, but with a life of crime. Drawn from history. Bohemia in the late 1300s was a place of controlled chaos. The kingdom sat inside the Holy Roman Empire, technically subject to its laws, practically governed by whoever had the most armed men at any given moment. The king, Wenceslaus IV, was widely regarded as a drunk who couldn't control his own court. The nobles smelled weakness. Factions formed. Private armies started burning each other's farms. Into this world, around 1360, Jan Žižka was born. Lower nobility. Small family estate in the village of Trocnov. Modest enough that financial pressure ground it down over the years until by 1384 the land was gone, sold. The family that had given him his name and his standing had nothing left to give, so Zizka became something else. He joined a gang of marauders loyal to the king, or rather loyal to whoever was paying, and spent years raiding the properties of the powerful Rosenberg family, who represented everything the lower nobility resented. He burned farms. He stole cattle. He waylaid merchants on the road. He learned, in the most direct way possible, how asymmetric warfare actually worked, how a small, mobile group of desperate men could outmaneuver a larger, better-equipped force by choosing terrain, moving fast, and hitting where the enemy wasn't looking. He was, by any definition, an outlaw. He was also becoming one of the most tactically gifted soldiers in Europe. Nobody knew it yet. In 1409, his gang leader was captured and tortured to death. Žižka was next in line for the same fate, and then the king issued a royal pardon. His crimes were forgiven. He was, suddenly and inexplicably, a free man with a clean record. The following year he fought at the Battle of Grunwald, one of the largest battles in medieval history, where the Polish-Lithuanian alliance crushed the Teutonic Knights. The scale of organized warfare, the tactics of professional armies, the way artillery and cavalry and infantry could be combined. Žižka absorbed all of it, filed it away. He came back to Bohemia in 1411, and Bohemia was about to explode. For decades, a quiet fury had been building inside the Czech church. The corruption was impossible to ignore. Priests selling indulgences, essentially charging people money to guarantee their place in heaven. Church officials living like princes while preaching poverty. The gap between what the institution professed and what it practiced had become so wide that educated people couldn't look away from it. One man gave that fury a voice. Jan Hus was a theologian and preacher at Prague University. Brilliant, uncompromising, and completely unwilling to soften his message for the sake of diplomacy. He preached that the church had rotted from within, that salvation came from faith, not from payments to corrupt clergy, that ordinary people deserved to hear scripture in their own language, not Latin they couldn't understand. The church called him a heretic. The Czech people called him a prophet. Žižka, now serving as a royal bodyguard at court, heard Hus preach. Something in those words connected with everything he had seen in his years as an outlaw, the way powerful institutions protected themselves at the expense of everyone below them. He became a devoted follower. In 1415, Hus was invited to the Council of Constance to defend his views. King Sigismund of Hungary, Wenceslaus's scheming half-brother, personally guaranteed his safety. He was arrested the moment he arrived, tried in a kangaroo court, burned at the stake on July 6, 1415. The martyrdom of Jan Hus didn't silence the movement, it ignited it. Thousands rose across Bohemia, calling themselves Hussites after their fallen shepherd. In July 1419, a Hussite priest led a mob into Prague's town hall and threw the king's representatives out of the windows. The defenestration, the first of Prague's famous window throwings, sent shockwaves across Europe. Wenceslaus died of a stroke shortly after. His half-brother Sigismund moved to claim the Bohemian throne. Sigismund was Catholic, ambitious, and deeply hostile to everything the Hussites represented. The Pope saw an opportunity, a crusade, officially blessed and sanctioned, drawing knights from 33 nations to crush the Czech heretics once and for all. The Crusaders had professional cavalry, plate armor, resources, numbers. They had the backing of the most powerful religious institution in the world. The Hussites had Jan Žižka. Here's the problem Žižka was solving, stated plainly. Farmers cannot fight knights in open battle. A heavily armored mounted knight is essentially a weapon system built around centuries of training, bred horses, and expensive equipment that most people cannot afford. Put a peasant with a flail against a knight on horseback in a flat field, and the outcome is not a battle, it's a slaughter. Žižka understood this completely, so he changed the battlefield. He had watched what wagons could do in his years as a marauder. He had seen how terrain neutralized cavalry. He began modifying farm carts into combat vehicles, reinforcing them with planks and iron, mounting early handguns and small cannons between them, chaining them together in tight defensive formations on high ground. Inside each wagon, 15 to 20 men with flails, hooks, and crossbows. The wagons locked together became a wall. The wall became a fortress. The fortress could be assembled anywhere Žižka chose to stand and fight. He called it the wagon fort. History would call it a revolutionary invention. Military historians would later trace its influence all the way to the armored warfare of the 20th century. But it wasn't just the technology, it was the mind behind it. Žižka drilled his peasants obsessively. He taught farmers to use their flails as weapons with precise technique. He integrated his handguns and cannons into coordinated fire patterns. He chose terrain with the eye of a man who had spent decades learning what ground does to a fight, where cavalry can charge, where it can't, where mud and hills and water become allies. Then he waited for the Crusaders to come. The results were immediate and devastating for the Crusaders. At Sudomias in March 1420, Žižka led a force that included women and children against heavily armored knights. He chose ground near fish ponds and marshland, terrain that horses couldn't cross effectively. The knights, unable to charge, were picked apart. At Witkov Hill outside Prague in July 1420, Sigismund brought thousands of crusaders to break the city's resistance. Žižka positioned 60 defenders on the hill with orders to hold. Those 60 people, armed with flails and early firearms, repelled a charge of thousands. The Crusaders fell back in disorder. The siege collapsed. Sigismund retreated from Bohemia with nothing. Then came the battle near Kutna Hora in late 1421. By this point, Žižka had already lost his remaining eye. A crossbow bolt during a siege, some accounts say a splinter of bark, others say the bolt itself, had taken the last of his vision. He was now completely blind. He was surrounded at Kutna Hora by a force 5 times the size of his own. He unleashed his artillery, one of the first commanders in European history to use field guns offensively in a mobile battle, broke the encirclement open, then reorganized his wagons into an attack formation and drove through Sigismund's lines. The army that had been about to annihilate him turned and ran. A blind 60-year-old man had just broken a professional imperial army with a column of reinforced farm carts. Žižka would never stop. He fought internal Hussite factions when the movement splintered, and won. He fought additional crusades, and won. He devised new tactics, drilled new soldiers, adapted to every situation his enemies could throw at him. In October 1424, he led a campaign into Moravia against Sigismund's remaining loyalists. Somewhere during that campaign he fell ill. An infection, possibly what his era called plague, possibly something else entirely. He died on October 11, 1424. Outside a castle he was in the process of besieging. His record was intact. He had never lost a battle. The soldiers who had followed him into every impossible fight gave themselves a name after his death: the Orphans. The Hussite Wars continued for another decade after Žižka died. The movement eventually fractured, moderate factions reconciling with the church. The radicals destroyed at the Battle of Lipany in 1434. Sigismund finally got his Bohemian throne. Žižka would have hated the compromise. He had fought for something more complete than that. But here's what the compromise couldn't erase. A Czech peasant army, led by a one-eyed outlaw turned blind general, had held off the combined military might of Catholic Europe for 15 years. They had repelled 5 papal crusades. They had forced the most powerful institution in the medieval world to negotiate with heretics on equal terms. None of that happens without the man at the center of it, without the tactical genius that turned flails into weapons, farm carts into fortresses, and defeat into an outcome that simply wasn't available. Military academies still study his methods. The words pistol and howitzer trace back to Czech words from his era. Gustav Adolf of Sweden, widely called the father of modern warfare, studied Žižka's combined arms tactics 2 centuries after his death and applied them to reshape European military strategy. A blind general who never lost, who won with farmers against everything. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe and leave a like. You can also write in the comments which historical topics you'd like to see next. See you in the next video.